In this week's episode, Eddie gets mystical, Roland gets ominous, and we finally get some answers about the Dark Tower. Welcome to Dark Tower YouTube. My name is Michelle McEwen. I am your host, and here at Dark Tower YouTube, we're taking a deep psychological dive into the magic, the mystery, and the metaphysics of Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower. I'm so glad to be back here with y'all. We are starting the Wastelands, and we're gonna get through probably about 13 or 14 chapters in book one. I'm not sure. I want these episodes to be about an hour, and I never know what I'm gonna think of on the spot to say. So look in the show notes to see where I stopped reading, if you happen to be reading along with me. The Wastelands, published in 1991, so we had a little bit of a gap between book two and book three. It's a different setup than the first two books in terms of structure. We had the gunslinger just coming in with 5 chapters. We had the drawing of the 3 coming in with those 3 sections and the shuffles in between, a prologue and epilogue. And this is just book 1 and book 2. That's it. We do start with some excerpts, though. Just like Stephen King went back and added one to the gunslinger, he opens this book with a few. So we're going to look at those, and I can't spend too much time on them because I haven't read some of the source material. We'll get there. Those are going to be side quests that we absolutely go on. I've already downloaded the one book that he pulled from for the excerpt. But let's start, because these excerpts are setting up what's to come. King thought about this, and I think it's worth our while to spend a little time sitting with what he picked out and how it makes us feel, and if we're picking up any psychic hotline kind of calls from these excerpts. So the first one is T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Pretty heavy and notable because, of course, this book is called The Wastelands. So he drew some inspiration from this poem. This was written around and about World War I, after World War I, I believe. That's about all I know about it. And it's kind of grim, as you'll see in this excerpt. A heap of broken images where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is a shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock. And I will show you something different from either your shadow in the morning striding behind you, or your shadow in the evening riding to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Okay, T.S. Eliot. Whew. So strong, bleak imagery there, setting us up for fear in a handful of dust. We're off to a great start here. No relief, no water. Okay, we're tuning in. We're tuning into the signal that King is putting out here. Next, Robert Browning's Childe Roland to the Dark Tower came. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mats, the head was chopped. The bents were jealous else. What made those holes and rents in the dock's harsh swarth leaves, bruised as to balk all hope of greenness? 'Tis a brute must walk pashing their life out with a brute's intent. So this is about somebody moving headstrong and just chopping down things in his sight, this brute. Is Roland this brute on the path to the Dark Tower? Questions we can kind of ponder when we read that excerpt. Are we the brute on the path to the Dark Tower reading? Is it somebody else? What do y'all think? Next, Robert Aickman's Hand in Glove. What river is it? Inquired Millicent idly. It's only a stream. Well, perhaps a little more than that. It's called the Waste. Is it really? Yes, said Winifred. It is. I've read The Wastelands quite a few times. I like to say it's my favorite book in the series, but every time I read the next one, I say that's my favorite book. I never really read these like this before, so thank you all for giving me the opportunity to sit with these a little bit more. This is the book, Hand in Glove, as a short story in a bigger collection that I have not read, but I have downloaded it because I want to read it now. What do we take out of here? The matter-of-factness of how this, something bigger than a stream, so we're moving along, carrying us along, is called the waste. Yes, it is. Why is it called the waste? That's not something you want to hear when you're on a journey. All right, so that's how King is leading us into this story. We pick up with our friends 60 miles northeast of the ocean where we left them at the end of the Drawing of the Three. It's been about 2 or 3 months and they've made camp. Roland has been healing and he's teaching Eddie and Susannah how to become gunslingers. And when we get these descriptions, it's kind of like the Boy Scouts. They're learning about how to track things and how to skin animals and build tools and all this kind of stuff. And they're learning how to shoot and how to kill what they shoot every single time. So the Boy Scouts with a dark twist is what our characters have been up to. Roland is making them gunslingers, and gunslingers are trained killers. Susannah is where we left our story at the end of the Drawing of the Three. You'll remember that, sorry, I have a dog hair, I think, on my face. Hopefully the dog will be quiet during this recording. Susannah is where we left our friends, our new friends. Odetta and Detta had seemingly merged into one person, but we didn't get a lot of information about this new character. We got a little bit about Susannah in the epilogue of the Drawing of the Three, and she was kind of this mysterious, stealthy, capable woman, but we didn't have much of a sense of who this was. And so I think it's fitting that King opens up this story with Susannah and Roland interacting. So we get to know who is this person, and we see as they talk that she really does seem to be a nice merging of the best qualities of Odetta and Detta. So Odetta was very smart and could think things through and had a way of communicating that could temper some of the emotions going on. And that was to her detriment, ultimately. She went too far. The pendulum swung too far to that side. And then Detta had to come in and just tell it like it is, letting those emotions flow, and then being quite stealthy and violent and willing to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. And so we do see the language is kind of weaving those together, which I think is very nice. You can kind of see glimpses of those other two, but this is a new person. And again, I've read this book several times, but never really kind of looking at just how seamlessly I feel like Susannah fits into the story. I never think about it because it's so easy that she's there for me. it just feels like a very natural fit. And I enjoyed dropping right in to their conversation and her shooting lesson. Before we get to that shooting lesson, let's talk about the name Susannah, because she does seem like she's going to be a main character henceforth. This is a Hebrew name, Shoshana, and we Anglicanized it. We made it the English version is Susannah of Shoshana, rooted in Hebrew. And this word traditionally meant lily, but in modern Hebrew, it's taken to mean rose. And that is pretty significant in my mind, because as we get through this week's reading, we will have a lot of rose imagery popping up. So I don't think that's an accident. What King does, I think, is it's never an accident. It's either just in the flow of what's happening, or he's really giving it some thought before he puts things down on the page, or both at the same time, because he's a master. One more thing I want to talk about is, in regards to Susannah, is that new name. And we had never heard that name before. She's calling it her middle name in the drawing of the three. Odetta Susannah Holmes and Detta Susannah Walker becomes Susannah Dean. Susannah, as the new name, is mirroring a spiritual tradition where when one has this intense awakening or leveling up, they get a new name from God, like we're going to talk about in the Bible, or you give yourself a new name based on how you feel about it or what the spirit world told you. And we have, of course, in the Bible, or if you're not familiar, Abram became Abraham, which was moving from exalted father to father of multitudes. So he had a greater destiny, and that reflected in his name. Sarai became Sarah, and that was my princess became princess of all, and that was a blessing. She had a bigger destiny in store. Jacob became Israel, and that was after wrestling with God. Jacob was the supplanter, and we talked about Jacob, Esau, and Isaac back in the Gunslinger, if you'll remember, because the man in black quoted the Isaac, the Isaac Bible story to the Gunslinger. And it was the one that Roland had no idea what he was talking about. Do you remember that? The man in black said, go gather some wood for your Isaac, because Isaac was the sacrificed boy, or in a lot of stories, he wasn't sacrificed, but there are a couple of traditions where Abraham went through with that sacrifice of his child. In any event, Roland's like, I don't know what you're talking about, which is weird because he knows all about the Bible. Anyway, his name, the supplanter, changed to Israel, meaning God prevails, reflecting his new identity, etc. Simon becomes Peter. So this is a biblical spiritual tradition where the old name, which was not quite as grandiose, becomes something amazingly grand. And Susannah, or Shoshana, meaning the rose, I think after this week's reading gives us pause to say this seems like a fitting name change. New name, new mission, new identity, new phase in living in life. All right, so we are going to get to Roland and Susannah. They are shooting little rocks, like pretty far away out in a clearing, and they're they have a really nice, easygoing relationship. It's great to see Roland kind of just bantering with her, and she's being saucy with the deadness, and I love it. I love it so much. He makes her mad, though, before she's going to shoot. This is she hasn't used live ammunition a lot, so he's been teaching them to shoot just with their eye and mind and heart without actually using the weapons. And we'll get to that in a second. But she hasn't used live ammunition very much, maybe once or twice. And we are not sure what kind of a shooter that she's going to be. We do learn that she's using Roland's gun to shoot. So he can't use his right gun anymore because his right hand doesn't have any fingers. And so he's given her that gun to wear and to use. I think that's pretty significant to say that Roland has handed over his gun willingly to Susannah. He trusts her, is what that tells us. So we're learning things about her that are not explicitly stated in the text, but through the idea that Roland willingly handed over his father's sandalwood grip revolver to this woman. That says a lot about who she is to the group, how he trusts her, their relationship, etc., right? I think that's masterfully done instead of just telling us about her. Let's read a little excerpt, shall we? "Last chance," the gunslinger said. "If that holster's uncomfortable, even the slightest bit, tell me now. We didn't come here to waste ammunition." She cocked a sardonic eye at him, and for a moment he could see Detta Walker in there. It was like hazy sunlight winking off a bar of steel. "What would you do if it was uncomfortable and I didn't tell you? If I missed all 6 of those itty-bitty things? Whop me upside the head like that old teacher of yours used to do?" The gunslinger smiled. He had done more smiling these last 5 weeks than he had done in the 5 years which had come before them. So I pull that out just to get our glimpse of this interaction, this back and forth. It's easy, it's fun, it's teasing. We do see the edge of Detta coming forward, but it's dialed down from where it was, and it's playful. It's a little pointy stick playful, but it is playful at that. And Roland is smiling. That's mostly why I pulled this out. He had smiled more in the last 5 weeks than he had in the 5 years before that. How wonderful for him. Very quickly, that's going to be ruined as we learn he's going crazy, but for now, we enjoy that smile and ease that Roland is experiencing. I also want to pull out that she's talking about, what would you do? Would you hit me like your teacher used to hit you? And of course, Roland wouldn't do that. But we later get to the idea of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Or what does Roland say? Taunts will never wound me. Taunts will never wound me. But really, Roland is using his words to wound Susannah. He's trying to do that here, as we will see later. So we're already kind of into the physical versus the metaphysical, psychological idea in this story. It's leading us into a much bigger metaphysical idea that we're going to get so excited about here at Dark Tower YouTube, which is the gunslinger's mantra, is what I'm going to call it. This is something that we hear Susannah saying twice, and then we're going to hear Eddie saying it as well. And a mantra is kind of like an incantation. It's something to kind of center one's thought, mind, body, spirit. And so that's what I'm going to call it. I don't know that it has an official title. I actually should look that up. I will before next show in the concordance. But anyway, let's get into it. Oh, here it is. I have a definition I wrote down. A mantra, a mystical formula of invocation or incantation, or a word or phrase that is repeated often or expresses the beliefs of a person or group. So that's a really good fit. I like that it's mystical. I like that it's invocation, incantation, which brings some magic into it. a word that or phrase that is repeated often. And we get a repetition, and we know that they've been repeating this up until we're hearing it for the first time. And it expresses the beliefs of a person or group, the gunslingers. This does tell us more about the gunslingers and how they are drawing upon the extra physical world in their training and to become what they become. We're going to talk about that a little bit more because that's not singular to gunslingers. Oh no. King writes, "Tell me your lesson again, Susannah." She sighed in mock exasperation. But as she spoke, her smile faded, and her dark, beautiful face became solemn. And from her lips, he heard the old catechism again, made new in her mouth. He had never expected to hear these words from a woman. How natural they sounded, yet how strange and dangerous as well. Before we get to the actual words, let's pause there, as this is a woman gunslinger, guys. And this is she the first ever? I would put money down on that Susannah is the first female gunslinger. And Roland is like amazed that he's hearing this coming from a woman, talking about how it's natural, strange, okay, and dangerous. What about it is dangerous, Roland? Is it just that it's a dangerous thing to become a gunslinger? I think because King is putting us in the context of moving this catechism, so there is a name for it. I kind of like mantra better, but King calls it a catechism, so okay. But moving this catechism from the masculine archetype to the feminine archetype. And again, I don't think this has ever happened before. King doesn't spell these things out for us, but he gives us these little hints for us to say, this is a big moment. Dangerous for women to become gunslingers. I fucking love that, because these women in Roland society have been oppressed and kind of pushed out of the way and deemed very unimportant to the big boys table and what we're doing as gunslingers. But now we've got a female gunslinger, and Roland is like, holy shit, this is kind of scary. Isn't that great? All right. Here we go. I do not aim with my hand. She who aims with her hand has forgotten the face of her father. I aim with my eye. I do not shoot with my hand. She who shoots with her hand has forgotten the face of her father. I shoot with my mind. I do not kill with my gun. She who kills with her gun has forgotten the face of her father. I kill with my heart. Pretty good. Pretty good writing there. Pretty epic, monumental words that solidify the idea of what is going to happen here. And it is metaphysical. And like I mentioned, this is not just something that gunslingers do. You can read all about Olympic athletes who engage in all kinds of extra physical training in addition to their physical training, where they're visualizing themselves winning. And it is the not gold medal, but the medalists that we hear this from. Isn't that interesting? So that, and there are studies about this too, where when people learn how to do something, the physical practice, say of practicing the piano. Yes, you have to sit down and actually practice, but then they had people practicing just as a visualization, practicing a song and things like that. And I don't think it's a big surprise. The people who had visualized themselves playing the song along with the physical repetition of it performed better when tested. There's a really cool story about this from a man named Mitch Horowitz, who is a master of mind metaphysics. And he's written a ton of things since then, but he kind of started his occult writing all the way back in 2003 when he wrote about Barry Zito in an issue of Science and Mind magazine. Now, Barry Zito was this up-and-coming, very young pitcher for the Oakland A's. He had this amazing season. He's in his second season, and things start to go south, and he starts losing. And I don't really follow baseball too much, but not only is he not doing a good job with his pitches, like, I guess the batters are hitting the ball more. Sorry. It's not good. And everyone's like, oh, this is the kid genius. I guess we were wrong about him. So he's in this big slump. And his dad, who happens to be a famous musician in his own right and a conductor of an orchestra, and he plays an instrument, so totally different field, but a master of music, comes in and says, hey, I can help you, but we're not going to throw the ball more. We're going to read the 1919 Ernest Holmes book, Creative Mind. And Barry Zito and his dad kind of read this book over the next week and took notes and really studied it and immersed themselves in it. And this was something that his dad had read, which I think is probably why he was doing such a good job. But it changed everything. This metaphysical teaching idea that the power of thought shapes the circumstances of our lives and not the other way around. The thought precedes the manifestation. And after, this was the only thing that changed. I mean, I don't know, maybe he did practice pitching more or something, but this was a big shift in the way that Barry Zito was doing things. And after this, he went on to win 11 of the 12 next games that he played, and the average of the batters not hitting the ball went way down, I think, which is better, whatever's better. And then he won awards, the whole thing. And he attributed it to the power of his mind. In other words, he started pitching with his eye, mind, and heart instead of with his hand and the ball. So you can go check that out on Medium by Mitch Horowitz if you want to read more about that. Check out his books in general, because if you love The Dark Tower, you may really like metaphysical shenanigans that he's writing about, which are cool and real. Okay, anyway, we're going to go back to Susannah. She's kind of stalling a bit, and so Roland starts poking the bear and making her angry. And he's like, hey, remember those honk mafas that were locking you up and made you pee yourself? And remember Jack Mort? And of course Susannah does, and of course she gets very upset about this. She says the mantra again and shoots every single one of her targets, but the last one she clips. So I think there were 7 targets and she hits 6 and clips the last one. So let's read through that, because there's a couple things in there I want to pull out. Do you remember what the honk mafas did to you and your friends? That wasn't me, she said. That was another woman. Her eyes had taken on a dull, sullen cast. He hated the look, but he also liked it just fine. It was the right look. The one that said the kindling was burning well, and soon the bigger logs would start to catch. Yes, it was. Like it or not, it was Odetta Susannah Holmes, daughter of Sarah Walker Holmes. Not as you are, but as you were. I really wanted to pull that out because I'm a little irritated with Stephen King for changing the name of Susannah's mother. You'll remember when we read The Drawing of the Three, we all noticed that her mother's name was Alice or Allie. And we were like, oh, dang, that was Roland's little girlfriend's name back in Tull. Huh, that's funny, isn't it? That they shared a name. Well, they don't anymore. So, okay, somebody didn't catch that on their reread or on their editing, proofreading. It does give us an explanation for where the hell Susannah came from, though. We kind of had that as a middle name, but he's saying it's the name of her mother. So, no, sorry. It doesn't tell us where Susannah came from. It tells us where Walker came from, because her middle name was Walker. Because everyone was like, oh, where does Walker come from? And it's a funny name for Detta Walker because she ain't got no legs. But here we learn there's a reason for it. So Susannah was her middle name. Walker is Sarah's middle name. Sorry, I said that wrong. I don't think I'm going to edit it. We'll get there. You got there, right? We're all on the same page now. Yes, Michelle, good. Okay. So it's a fair trade. I'll say to King, okay, you took away something, but you gave us something else, so we'll call it even and move forward. So she shoots the targets, clips the last one, and she's pissed though. She's really mad. And we learn in that little segment that Roland is like, good. And he says that to her. So she's really angry. And she's like, you hurt me. And it's hurt that's underneath of the anger. It's this inner hurt that she can't believe that this man that seems like they have a pretty good relationship, perhaps they even love each other. They do love each other. He told Eddie that, I think, at the end of the last book, right? Anyway, she's very hurt by his actions. And we're going to read an excerpt seeing how Roland responds. I did not think or care about your hurt, he said patiently. I saw you show your teeth and knew you meant to bite. So I put a stick in your jaws. And it worked, didn't it? Her expression was now one of astonishment. You bastard! Instead of replying, he took the gun from her holster, fumbled the cylinder open with the remaining 2 fingers on his right hand, and began to reload the chambers with his left hand. Of all the high-handed arrogant, you needed to bite, he said in that same patient tone. Had you not, you would have shot all wrong with your hand and your gun instead of your eye and mind and heart. Was that a trick? Was it arrogant? I think not. I think, Susannah, that you were the one with arrogance in her heart. I think you were the one with a mind to get up to tricks. That doesn't distress me. Quite the opposite. The gunslinger without teeth is no gunslinger. Damn it, I'm not a gunslinger. So pulling that out because Roland is, we see the man that we have been irritated by, who has very little empathy seemingly when he's doing his gunslinger stuff. He's like, yeah, I know I hurt you. I meant to do that. She's like, God, what kind of a person are you? He's like, this is just how it is. It's not my fault. You're a gunslinger. And she's like, I'm not, but she is. And we do get glimpses into how she enjoys the shooting in some ways. The coldness falls over her as it fell over Eddie back at Balazar's, as it falls over Roland. That's a trait of a gunslinger. And so she's got it, even though she's not quite sure that she wants it or likes it necessarily. There is a part of her that does. So we have to wonder or be curious about Roland's actions here. And are they justified? He is doing his job. She did shoot amazingly well. Was there any other way that he could have done that without re-traumatizing her deepest, darkest wounds? I don't know, but he doesn't even ask the question. He is just doing things the way that he was taught how to do them, and he thinks this is how they're moving forward. So that's that. As they're having this exchange, though, in contrast to Roland's lack of empathy, Roland puts his hand to his head and just has this look of suffering. And immediately, Susannah shifts out of anger, hurt, into concern and empathy for Roland. What's wrong? What is ailing you? Something is wrong with you. And we learned that she's been noticing this for some time. And she's like, you have to tell me. You have to tell us what is going on with you. So our first clue that something is not good with Roland. What does Roland think when she responds like this? He had never been a man, King writes. He had never been a man who understood himself deeply or cared to. The concept of self-consciousness, let alone self-analysis, was alien to him. His way was to act, to quickly consult his own interior, utter mysterious workings, and then act. Of them all, he had been the most perfectly made. A man whose deeply romantic core was encased in a brutally simple box which consisted of instinct and pragmatism. He took one of those quick looks inside now and decided to tell her everything. There was something wrong with him. Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Something wrong with his mind. Something as simple as his nature, and as strange as the weird, wandering life into which that nature had impelled him. He opened his mouth to say, "I'll tell you what's wrong, Susannah, and I'll do it in just 3 words. I'm going insane." But before he could begin, another tree fell in the forest. It went with a huge, grinding crash. So we had heard some disturbances in the forest as they had been talking to each other, but they're focused on their task, not really paying attention. But now it's getting bigger, it's getting closer, and they have no other option but to pay attention, and Roland isn't going to tell her the thing right now, but we learn what it is, the reader. I'm going insane. This is a problem of his mind. Remember, when we opened the drawing of the 3, Roland was also having this psychological torture going on. And here we are in the beginning of the Wastelands with a very similar thing happening, except this is worse, arguably. This is more intense, and we're going to learn more about it as we continue to read. I'm going insane. The last book, he was just like racked with guilt over the death of Jake, but now it's killing his mind. It's breaking his mind down. On the plus side, he decided to tell her. He doesn't get to do that. It's interrupted, but he decided to tell her. I feel like that's a significant win for our friend Roland, that he is going to share his feelings and what's happening with him. We like that. And we're still, though, I think it's interesting where it's like when King is describing him, he is not a man who understood himself deeply or cared to. But he has to. He is being forced into himself in this crisis. we all along, and it says the concept of self-analysis was alien to him. That's okay, because we've been doing it all along here at Dark Tower YouTube. That's what we love to do, is psychoanalyze Roland. And we have kind of seen him being this very unemotional, just like we're told, acting, moving forward without giving much thought to anything or anyone in his way. That brute from the opening poem. That's matching up with Roland, right? But we have seen him ignore his utterly mysterious inner workings. I love that. And it is coming back to get him. It's kicking him in his metaphorical butt right now, because he has not been able to kind of spend that time, or didn't before now. These are the consequences. He's suffering yet again, just like he was at the beginning of the last book. And at the beginning of the last book, we had that psychological urge for punishment, so feeling so guilty and wanting to die, wanting to be punished for what he did. And we had those lobsters show up, remember, with their kind of weird nursery rhymey talk and their questions, their idiot questions about what am I doing, who am I, right? Remember that? Okay. Anyway, I'm bringing that up again because we're going to see a very similar thing play out here with Shardik. So moving on, they realize, oh no, something big is moving towards the camp, rightly freaking out and taking off. We move over to some exposition about the bear and Shardik, a novel by Richard Adams, which is why Eddie is thinking of Watership Down. So those of you who have read Watership Down, that's a novel by Richard Adams. Also, you might be like, oh yeah, he wrote Shardik. So this is not a spoiler. So I don't want to say, like, oh, that was a big reveal. It was a backhanded way. Again, this is one of the reasons why I think he's such a brilliant writer. He doesn't just tell you the thing. He tells you something and leads you to think about the thing, or wonder about the thing, or figure out the thing. It's a bit of a riddle, perhaps. So I'm not going to call that a spoiler. I already told you, so too late. But Shardik is a book that I've recently read, and the opening of Shardik, King is absolutely paying an homage to Richard Adams here, with his description of the bear. And he makes it his own, of course, but reading the beginning of Shardik, I was like, oh wow, I'd never read that before. I'd read Watership Down, as many of us have. And reading Shardik, I just thought, this is brilliant on King's part to just kind of lay out the same scene, the same feeling, the same vibe, the same empathy for the bear that we get with Richard Adams. The old people who used to live in the woods, the West Woods. I feel like that also, there's people in the book Shardik. It's not just about the bear. And that, to me, I'm like, King, were you kind of channeling those people and saying those are the old people? I don't know, but it feels like could be a good fit there, perhaps, or for sure. He's drawing on that book, though. This colossal undying bear, in Shardik, it's the bear, and I haven't finished that book, so I don't really know what's going on, so no real spoilers here, but there is a big bear in that book who's considered a god by the people. And here, King makes sure to point out that the people ultimately decide that this bear is a demon incarnate, the shadow of a god. And that, again, is also just brilliant, taking, like, he loves Richard Adams, he loves the story. He's going to weave it into his own story, much as he's still weaving the Lord of the Rings through in little ways. We'll pick up on one of those later. And again, I didn't read the Lord of the Rings, so I'm sure I'm missing a lot of it. We're going to read the Lord of the Rings as a side quest on this channel at some point. So those of you who love the Lord of the Rings, hold on to your butts. It's coming at some point. But he does kind of channel Richard Adams' idea, but flips it into the upside down, into the shadow of a god, into the demon incarnate, which is fucking perfect. King writes, they called him Mir, which to these people meant the world beneath the world. He stood 70 feet high, and after 18 or more centuries of undisputed rule in the West Woods, he was dying. Perhaps the instrument of his death had at first been a microscopic organism in something he had eaten or drunk. Perhaps it was old age. More likely a combination of both. The cause didn't matter. The ultimate result, a rapidly multiplying colony of parasites foraging within his fabulous brain, did. After years of calculating brutal sanity, Mir had run mad. We were just told, I'm going insane by Roland. That's the last thing that we left off with, and now we're dropped into Mir is going mad. Once again, that physical reflection of a psychological state playing out in the Dark Tower. I looked up Mir, and this is Slavic. Can mean a few different things. Can mean world, peace, or village community. And the world peace vibe, I'm sure, is why they called the space station Mir. But in Persian or Arabic, Mir is a title, meaning commander or prince. And I think that's a better fit for our giant demon bear. All right, so this bear is going insane, dying. He knows it. He knows that there are people in the woods, and he thinks they finally figured out how to kill me. They're poisoning me, and I'm going to stop it. I'm not going to let them kill me. King writes, the bear, whose real name was not Mir, but something else entirely, made his way through the forest like a moving building, a shaggy tower with reddish brown eyes. I pull that out because this is a familiar theme to us in this series already, where the name of someone is withheld from the reader for some time. So just like we didn't get Roland's name for 60 pages in The Gunslinger, we knew Eddie's name, but Roland didn't for some time. And Roland said, oh, but that makes sense because names are sacred things, hidden things with great power, something like that. And here we have King telling us, his name's not Mir, by the way, but doesn't tell us what it is. Of course, later we learn that it's Shardik, but just pulling that up to say repetition mirrors happen so often in this series, and we love it when we can pull them out and find them. Oh, and Susannah's name. Remember, we didn't get her name for a minute too at the end of the drawing of the three. That was withheld from us. I just want to say that King has such empathy for this bear, and it reminded me of why I love Stephen King so much. And he's categorized with other writers. I'm not going to name any names, but I've read these other horror writers, and many of them I don't think hold a candle to Stephen King. And I love to ponder the differences. What about this particular horror writer who's churning out lots of books the same way that Stephen King does, with similar harebrained, psychic, horrific ideas. What makes that so different, for me anyway? And I think a lot of it just has to do with empathy for the bad guy. It's pretty rare that King doesn't drop us into an understanding of that evil force. He does it all the time. And he does it with this bear where I feel sorry for the bear, don't you? Don't you feel sad for Shardik? This is a sentient being. He remembers his life for thousands of years. He knows that he's dying, and he thinks he knows how he's dying. And he thinks he can stop it. So if you were in that situation, you would do exactly the same thing as this poor big shaggy bear. Empathy is just getting somebody to realize how something moved from point A to point B. We understand something happened in the middle to end up with a bad outcome. And we say, oh, that's a bad person, or they're stupid, or they're crazy, instead of trying to understand what happened there. King very clearly walks us through what happened here to make Shardik the baddie that we now have to kill, or else he's going to kill us. And we have to kill him. We're not, I was going to say we're not sad when he dies, but we kind of are because we connected with him. King shared Shardik's heart with us, so part of us is with this bear. Do you agree? Anyway, I think that's one of the reasons why Stephen King is different than other authors in his genre, and just different in general. But that sets him apart from the other horror writers. All right, I said we were going to get to chapter 13 or 14. Ha! Let's move over to Eddie in the camp, and he's carving. So this is a new behavior for him. In keeping with the theme of our last book, he's hearing the voice of his brother in his head, and his brother is really being hard on him. It sounds like Eddie used to carve when he was younger, and Henry was like, oh, what are you doing, little sissy? And twice King does this, and remember I say whenever King repeats something more than once, twice in Eddie's mind, Henry's voice is saying, oh, what's a little teeny piss pot for your teeny peeny or something. And it's just like the small penis energy is brought up twice. So I just thought I'd bring that up in case you missed it. Of course, that's what's going on here. We learn that Henry is that way, though, because there was a Dean sister who was struck and killed by a driver when she was just playing outside on the sidewalk. And how horrific is that? And after that happened, it sounds like Henry was blamed for it. Nobody was watching out for Gloria. And so Henry now must watch out for Eddie, and that is his main job in this life. So King here giving us some empathy for Henry too, because we hear Henry, what are you doing, little sissy? And we're like, oh, this guy again? I thought we got rid of him. He's dead, but he's living on still in Eddie's mind. We kind of hate him. But I think King does a good job here of giving us a little more empathy. We kind of teeter-totter with Henry. In the last book, we really didn't like him, but then we learned about Vietnam and how he was treated or not treated and becoming addicted to the pain pills, etc. And here we're saying, damn, like to have the death of your little sister put on your head and said this will never happen again because your job is to make sure it doesn't. That's pretty shitty. That's not a good life for a kid or a teenager. So we have some empathy for Henry here while also being like, man, but he kind of sucks in a big way as well. Henry's job is to watch out for Eddie, and Eddie's job is to make it look like Henry's doing a good job and never look better at Henry than in whatever they're doing. And like, Eddie's good at most things, so it becomes tricky because he knows that Henry has a stressful life and has a really stressful job watching out for Eddie, so he doesn't want to make him feel bad or add extra stress by being better at something. So that right there is just fucked up. Okay, quiet. No, come here. Come over here and be quiet. Come on. I don't want to edit this. Come on, be quiet. Okay. So he doesn't want to add on to the stress of Henry's already stressful life, but he also really loves Henry. And so he has this deep-seated notion that he has to hide his talents and abilities from not only Henry, but the rest of the world. And so this shame comes along with it, kind of just like beaten into him by the situation and by Henry himself. So we learn a lot more about Eddie here and Henry and their relationship and how that is still playing out in Eddie's world. King gives us the backstory of how Eddie found this piece of wood to carve. King writes, 2 days ago, while Susannah was skinning out a rabbit and Roland was starting supper, Eddie had been in the forest, just south of camp. He had seen a funny spur of wood jutting out of a fresh stump. A weird feeling. He supposed it was the one people called déjà vu, swept over him, and he found himself staring fixedly at the spur, which looked like a badly shaped doorknob. He was distantly aware that his mouth had gone dry. Déjà vu, huh? This kicks off the first of quite a few instances in this first book where Eddie is opening up to the extra-physical, invisible world. So he's hit with this sense of déjà vu. I looked up déjà vu. This translates literally to already seen. And I feel like that's such a great fit for what is described about what's going on with Eddie and the pieces of wood, where he can already see the shape and it's just a matter of getting as much as he can out of the piece of wood. So déjà vu means already seen. First used by Émile Borac, a French philosopher, in his 1876 book, The Future of Psychic Sciences. Yeah, gotta read that one. So Eddie having some déjà vu and having this feeling of, I know what that is and I know that it's mine and I know what I need to do with it. Don't you wish you had more of that going on in your life? This is Eddie remembering that he loves wood carving and then having his brother's shame kind of come back and hit him across the face while he's trying to enjoy himself. King writes, he felt a burst of shame, a sense of wrongness, that strong sense of secrets that must be kept at any cost. And then he remembered again that Henry Dean, who had in his later years become the great sage and eminent junkie, was dead. This realization had still not lost its power to surprise. It kept hitting him in different ways. Sometimes with sorrow, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with anger. On this day, 2 days before the great bear came charging out of the green corridors of the woods, it had hit him in the most surprising way of all. He had felt relief and a soaring joy. He was free. I pull that out because I did just mention that Eddie's has this little psychic tickle, the déjà vu about the carving that he's going to do. And when he starts carving, all of his past kind of comes back and his brother is taunting him and making him feel this shame and embarrassment, whatever. But he's letting go of it. He's like, oh, he's dead though. I don't have to listen to this anymore. He's dead. And isn't that wonderful? I feel so free. So as we watch Eddie opening up to that extra physicality, and I kind of said to you, wouldn't you love it if you just had more of those intuitive hits? Perhaps Eddie letting go of his past, trauma, shame, etc., being free of it, feeling joy instead of guilt, shame, feeling relief and freedom, that opens up his ability to receive these messages. So, what are the ways that we could all open ourselves up a little bit more? If you're into the idea of psychic messages, extra physicality, let some parts of yourself go. All right, we're at an hour, and of course the dog is getting loud. This is a good spot to stop. So I made it through chapter 4, not 14, but this is going to take as long as it takes. We love being curious here. We love diving deep, and we are doing a deep dive, and we are analyzing and thinking about as many parts of this book critically as we can. And so I'm going to keep doing that. If you're still here listening, you are my people. Thank you so much. Leave a comment telling me what you think is up at this point in the story, or if you've read it before. Try not to spoil it for anybody else because we're spoiler free at this portion, this part of the episodes, I should say. Stay tuned. I'll be back. I've got all my notes for the first book of the Wastelands, but we're going to do it in smaller chunks. Until we meet again, my beautiful Dark Tower friends, may you have long days and pleasant nights.